All right. Good morning, fifth grade. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're all doing well. We're going to start by going over the follow-up questions from last time. A ride at Six Flags says you must be 48 inches tall to ride on it. If a person is 5 feet tall, are they tall enough to go on the ride? Explain. So we have 5 feet, and we want to convert that to inches. So we want to see if it's more or less than 48 inches. So I'm going from feet to inches. I'm making two equivalent fractions with feet, inches, feet, inches. So I know 1 foot is 12 inches, and here I have 5 feet. So to get from 1 to 5, I multiply by 5. So I'm doing the same thing on the bottom, and I see someone who's 5 feet is 60 inches. So they may go on the ride because you have to be 48 inches tall to go on the ride, and they're more than 48 inches tall. Follow-up 2, a football field is 120 yards long. How many feet is that? So I'm going from yards to feet. Now, I want us to think about this for a second. It's a little tricky for some people. Yards is a larger measurement than feet. Feet is smaller. For that reason, we are going to need more feet to take up the space from that many yards. So our number should get bigger. So I'm going from yards to feet, yards to feet. I'm saying 1 yard is 3 feet, and I have 120 yards. So I'm multiplying by 120 in both the numerator and the denominator. So if I do this over here, 120 times 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. I should get 360 feet, which makes sense because feet are smaller than yards, so you need more of them. Convert 2 miles to feet. I'm going from miles to feet. Miles is a much larger distance than feet, so we're going to need a lot of feet to take this space up. So I'm making 2 equivalent fractions. We have miles, feet, miles, feet. Know that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So I have 2 miles. To get from 1 to 2, I multiply by 2. Same thing here. Or I could just double it, add it twice, whatever you wish to do. Saw some people just double it, which is fine. 8 plus 8 is 16. 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 5 is 10. So we get 10,560 feet. All right, here's one more conversion in the customary system for distance to practice for your warm-up. It says convert 245 yards to inches. Think about it. Are inches smaller or larger than yards? Go ahead and pause and try and solve this question. Remember, we're going from yards to inches. All right, so I'm going to set up this problem going yards to inches, going yards to inches. Now let's say you don't remember how many inches is in 1 yard. Let's remember what we do know. We know 1 foot is 12 inches. We know 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. So think about it. If 3 feet equals 1 yard and 1 foot is 12 inches, I'm doing 12 inches 3 times. So that means that 1 yard is 36 inches. Okay, so let's do it. I have 1 yard is 36 inches, and I have 245 yards. I want to know how many inches this is. Remember, inches are a lot smaller than yards, so we're going to need a lot of inches to take up 245 yards. So I'm multiplying 1 times 245, and on the bottom, 36 times 245. You could do this many ways. You could do the standard algorithm, you could do an area model. Because I haven't done an area model in a while with you guys, I'm gonna model it using an area model. 245 and 36. We gotta put that in expanded form, so I have 245 and 36. Let's break it down. 200 times 30, 2 times 3 is 6. Add 3 zeros, 6,000. 200 times 6, 2 times 6 is 12. Add my 2 zeros, 1,200. 40 times 30, 4 times 3 is 12. Add my 2 zeros, 1,200. 40 times 6, 4 times 6 is 24. Add my 1 zero, 240. 5 times 30, 5 times 3 is 15. Add my 1 zero. And 5 times 6 is 30. Now I want to add this up. So I have 6,000 plus 1,200, 1,200. Start there. I get 0, 0, 2 plus 2 is 4, 6 plus 1 is 8. So far I have 8,400. Now should I add up 240 plus 150 plus 30 4 plus 5 is 9, 9 plus 3 is 12, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 1 is 4. I get 420, so now I'm going to add these two pieces up. 8,400 plus 420 is a total of 8,820 inches. So if I think about this, and I did it, you could even go ahead if you want and check it on a calculator to make sure that you're right. I have 8,820 inches, which makes sense that I have a lot more inches because of how small they are compared to yards. Okay. Now, last week, we talked about measuring distance in the customary system. That's how we measure distance, how long stuff is here in the United States. But there's another system of measurement called the metric system that we use in science all the time, and pretty much every other country around the world uses the metric system. So there are some units of measure that I want to introduce to you for the metric system. So we're asking the same question. How long is something? How far did you go? So the smallest unit in the metric system is a millimeter. 1 millimeter is the thickness of a small coin. So it's really, really tiny. So if you took like a quarter or a dime and put it on the side and measured its thickness, that's 1 millimeter. 1 centimeter is the width of your little finger. So it's still really, really small. It's how wide your tiny finger is, like your pinky. A centimeter you should be familiar with because it's on a ruler on the other side of inches, and centimeters are smaller than inches. 1 meter is the length of 1 stride of a tall person. So that's a meter. So if Mr. Lengthy takes a big step, that's 1 meter in his step, okay? And then 1 kilometer. Kilometer in the metric system is kind of like their version of miles. It's the length of about 5 city blocks. So if you're walking 5 blocks from your house away, that's about 1 kilometer. So again, these are the units of the metric system. You have a millimeter, a centimeter, a meter, and a kilometer. And if you notice something, it all comes back to this word meter, which we're going to begin to talk about today and really talk about a lot more on Thursday. All right, so this is a ruler, and when we talk about the metric system, we start with the smallest unit in the metric system, which is a millimeter. A millimeter is this tiny, tiny little line here at the ruler, and it takes 10 millimeters to equal 1 centimeter. So there's 10 little lines in the ruler to give you 1 centimeter. Now, both millimeters and centimeters are really, really small. But let's compare them to something else. If I take 100 of these centimeters, which is the distance from the edge here to the one with my finger, and I have 100 centimeters on the floor, this is the size of 1 meter. 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. Just as I said before, 10 millimeters equals 1 centimeter. Now, this is 1 meter, which is a common unit of measure to measure anything from the length of a table to how tall someone is, how tall Bucky is, how long Bucky is, etc. Now, if I take 1,000 meters, which look, this is 1 meter. If I line up 1,000 of them, that's going to equal 1 kilometer, which is the unit of measure used for distance when we're talking about how far something is, like how far you travel in a car or on a bus, or how far you are running. We use kilometers. That's what the metric system uses that is closest to the idea of a mile. A kilometer is still smaller, but it would be 1,000 meters equaling 1 kilometer. The key here to remember, and we're going to talk about this more on Thursday in our next video, is the metric system is similar to the place value system. It operates on a base 10 number system. So we want to think of tens, hundreds, thousands when we are going from one unit of measure to the other. So I just showed you what a millimeter, a centimeter, and a meter looks like in relation to its size. So I just want to go over the units of measure from smallest to biggest and biggest to smallest. In the metric system, when measuring how long something is or distance, a millimeter is the smallest unit of measure, followed by a centimeter, a meter, and then a kilometer. So because millimeters are the absolute smallest unit of measure, it will take the most millimeters to fill up a space. Like if we wanted to measure something, how long something was, think of a table, it might be more appropriate to use meters, but if we used millimeters or centimeters, it would take a lot of them because they're so small. If we rank the units of measure from biggest to smallest, Kilometers is the largest, followed by meters, centimeters, and millimeters. Kilometers, it would take fewer kilometers to cover a distance in comparisons to meters or centimeters. Or millimeters. Kilometers we mostly use to measure the distance when you're traveling or you're running. Okay? So you might recognize this because I gave this to you last week. What is the correct unit of measure? And I gave you a bunch of different objects. But this time, I want you to write the correct unit of measure that you would use to measure these things in the metric system. It is possible that there could be more than one answer. Go ahead and try and solve this on your own now. All right, so here are some of my ideas. The length of the Colorado River, I would measure that in kilometers because it's a really long river that like goes through most of the state. The length of a boat, I would measure that in meters. The height of a tree, I would measure that in meters. The length of a bracelet, I could say you could use centimeters. The length of a bus route, I would say kilometers. That's like usually used for distance when traveling. The length of a car, meters. The height of a lunch bag, I would say centimeters. The length of a football field, I would say meters. The length of a cross-country race, if it's a short race like a sprint, you might run in meters, but if it's a long race, it would be kilometers. The length of material for a curtain, you would use meters. The depth of a swimming pool, you would use meters. And the width of a butterfly, because it's pretty small, I would say you could use millimeters or centimeters. All right, let's try some. I'm going to read the questions and then I'm going to give you a moment to pick the correct answer. Which of these is the best unit of measurement for the length of a football field? Millimeters, centimeters, meters, or kilometers? Which of the following could best be measured in meters? The length of a sheet of paper, the length of an ant, height of a chalkboard, the amount of water in a pool. Which of the following is the best unit of measure for the length of an ant? Millimeters, milliliters, centimeters, or gallons? What would be the most likely measure of the height of a classroom door? 2 centimeters, 2 meters, 10 centimeters, 5 meters. I'll give you a moment. All right, for the first one, which of these is the best unit of measurement for the length of a football field? I would say meters, not quite kilometers. Which of the following could best be measured in meters? I would say the height of a chalkboard. How tall or how long a chalkboard is. Which of the following is the best unit of measure for the length of an ant? An ant is really, really, really tiny, so I would probably use millimeters, but you could probably use centimeters as well. what would be the most likely measure of the height of a classroom door? Think about how much a meter was when I showed you before. I would say the height of a classroom door is about 2 meters. The centimeters are way too small. 5 meters, I think, is too tall. Let's try 4 more. Which is the best unit of measurement for measuring the length of a worm? Grams, feet, meters, or centimeters? Which item could best be measured in centimeters? The amount of water in the ocean, the amount of juice in an orange, the mass of a person, the length of a pen. Which is the best unit to measure the width of a pencil tip? Millimeters, centimeters, meters, or kilometers? The length of a fly is best measured in millimeters, kilometers, centimeters, or milligrams. I'll give you a second to try it. For the first one, which is the best unit of measurement for measuring the length of a worm? I would say centimeters. Grams is not length, and feet is not the metric system. So I would say centimeters. Which item could best be measured in centimeters? I would say the length of a pen. The amount of water in the ocean, the amount of juice in an orange, that has to deal with liquids or volume, which we're going to talk about next week, and masses has to do with weight or how heavy something is. Which is the best unit to measure the width of a pencil tip? If you look at how tiny a pencil tip is, I would say millimeters, because it's so small, and millimeters are used for really small things. The length of a fly is best measured in, a fly is pretty tiny, I would also say millimeters. You could probably also use centimeters as well. So here are some reflections today based on what we learned about the lengths, or the units of measure for length and distance in the metric system. As we know, there are 2 systems of measurement that exist in the world: the customary system used in the United States and the metric system used throughout the rest of the world and in science. Very small distances in the metric system are usually measured in millimeters. Small distances are used in the metric system are measured in centimeters. To measure anything that is slightly larger, like the height of a person, you would use meters. Large distances, like how far you traveled in a car, are usually measured in kilometers. The smaller unit of distance you use, the more of that unit you will need to measure something, because if it's so small, you need a lot of that unit to take up the distance. The larger unit of distance you use, the less of that unit you will need to measure something. So just like last week, it's the same kind of follow-up question. Please walk around your house or outside and come up with items you would measure using millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Please explain why you would use those measurements or choose those measurements. Feel free to take pictures of the items as well and send them to me. If you do, I will try to include them in my video for Thursday. Questions. If you have any questions about what I talked about in the video, please let me know by emailing me your responses or messaging me on Dojo. Also, remember, all of you have a Google Meets meeting with me sometime this week. It's possible some of you already had yours yesterday. Can't wait to see you there. Have a great rest of the week. Miss you all. Talk to you guys later. Bye.